Hey guys, this is our official compilations channel. If you want to check out our newest videos as soon as they're uploaded, then check out our main channel, The Misery Machine. We usually don't start episodes with warnings, but this case is one of the most horrific we have ever covered, and it involves a young child. I can't even begin to think that a human being is capable of doing such unimaginable things to a little girl in such a brutal fashion day after day after day. If you are faint of heart, I strongly suggest you skip this one. I'm not even kidding. Teslyn Elizabeth O'Call was born in Ontario, California on June 8, 1994 to parents Stella Ann Kaiser and Jason Adam O'Call. She was the couple's second child. Their first was a boy named Jason, who was named after his father. Teslyn loved her big brother, who was described as her best friend. Teslyn had blue eyes and blonde hair cut into a bob with short bangs framing her face. Her grandfather Ken O'Call said she was a sweet baby who grew into a smiling and loving toddler. Her aunt said that she was wonderful. She loved life, she loved music, she loved animals. Many relatives mentioned her love of all sorts of animals, from horses to dogs, cats, and bugs. Whenever she found a bug, her grandfather said she had to show it off to everyone in the house. She liked dolls, drawing, playing in the tub with her bath toys, and her favorite toy was a truck. Her uncle said she was always happy when they took her to the park, and she loved being on the swings. Pictures taken in December of 1996 show Teslyn dressed up to celebrate Christmas in bright red tights, a green and red plaid skirt, and a white shirt. In one photo, she holds up a candy cane and looks at someone behind the camera as if she was showing off a prize. Other photos taken that day show her enjoying her candy treat.
Teslyn's mother, Stella, had a difficult childhood. She had a twin brother named Billy, along with two older brothers and an older sister. She described her father as a controlling man with a violent temper and said she was a victim of his physical mistreatment. Her twin remembered their childhood a little differently, however. He said he personally didn't see his sister get hurt, but said his father was a very strict parent who was tough on his children. Stella was about 13 years old. She and her mother were in the house when her father removed himself from the earth with a gun. Billy was outside that day and he recalled hearing the gunshot. He said Stella and his mother ran out of the house screaming. That kind of a sudden, violent death would be a traumatic event for anybody, but even more difficult for a young teen. For the next few years, she acted out by smoking, drinking, experimenting with drugs, and running around causing trouble. She used crystal for the first time when she was 14 years old. She started dating Jason Adam O'Call and was soon pregnant. She was 16 when Jason Jr. was born. Her boyfriend was 17. She moved in with his family in Victorville, California, and lived with them on and off over the next several years. 2 years afterwards, when Stella was 18, Teslyn was born. Stella continued to live with Jason and his family, but she wasn't happy with her life there. Jason's father described her as a party girl who was immature and liked making Jason jealous, sometimes even encouraging Jason to fight with other men over her. Jason went back to school, graduated, and got a good job as a steel worker to take care of his family, but Stella wasn't ready to grow up and give up the party life.
Stella's older sister lived in Oregon, and when her twin brother moved there, she decided that she also wanted a fresh start. In mid-1996, she moved herself and both children to Springfield, Oregon. Jason's father said she saw the kids as her meal ticket because Jason sent money to Stella for their care. Not much is known about her first few months in Oregon, but life as a single mom wasn't easy. She struggled to take care of her son, who was almost 5 years old by this time, and she was often impatient with him. Though the agency never released any records, her twins said that Oregon's DHS had gotten involved, and Stella was required to take parenting classes. At Christmas that year, she and the children visited Jason and his family in California. When Stella lived there, they said that she had been caring and attentive and a good mother to the children. But when she and the kids arrived at the bus station after living in Oregon, the family saw the first signs of neglect. Despite the cold weather, both children were barefoot. The visit lasted 6 weeks, and over that time, Jason's family saw Stella treat her son harshly. She spanked him, pushed him, slapped him, and yanked him around by his arm. She told Jason's father, "I just can't handle the boy no more." Stella treated Teslin kindly, though, and seemed to be able to take care of her. Jason's father said she'd never shown any tendency to be abusive toward the baby. Concerned for the 5-year-old's safety, the family convinced her to leave Jason behind when she went back to Oregon, but they let her take Teslin with her.
After her return to Oregon, Stella met Jesse Caleb Compton, who was newly single for all of the worst reasons one could imagine. Starting in July of 1996, police were called 6 times to this apartment he shared with his girlfriend and their 2-year-old daughter because of CA and DV. His girlfriend left for a little bit, but soon let him move in again. She was reported to DHS and their daughter was taken away until the mother could prove Jesse wasn't allowed any contact with her. Realizing that she needed to protect her little girl, her girlfriend finally found the courage to end the relationship, kick him out of her home and her life for good. This left Jesse free to make another woman miserable. He found Stella. Soon after they met, she and Teslin moved into his dirty and smelly bachelor apartment in Springfield. The fence behind his unit and the walls inside were marked by a number of holes because Jesse was in the habit of throwing knives and punching the walls when he got angry. Most mothers would want to keep their children far away from a place like that, but Stella was drawn to it. She was a party girl, and Jesse liked to party as well. He was known for throwing some drug parties featuring lots of crystal and lots of drinking. Sometimes these parties would not stop for several days at a time. He liked to smoke his crystal by melting it with a small propane torch. And as a party trick, he would sometimes hold the torch to his own hand, showing off how much pain he could withstand. Stella let Jesse take over Teslin's discipline. She would leave the girl alone with him while she attended her parenting classes. Because of the parties, a number of people were around to see Jesse's interactions with Teslin. Jesse always seemed to be angry with her. He always called her names, slapped the toddler's face, made her stand in the corner for hours on end. He smacked her with a wooden spoon, a spatula, and a belt. He was seen dragging her around by the hair and often forced her to take cold baths and showers. Once, when Jesse angrily threw a knife across the room, it almost hit Teslin, missing her head by mere inches. One witness saw him pouring a beer down her throat until she gagged. Another saw him beating her with a belt to make her go to sleep. When the woman asked Stella if they should stop him, Stella simply said, "Just let him take care of that." Witnesses also saw Stella slapping Teslin on the bottom with her hand. They said she didn't feed the toddler regularly and sometimes pulled her hair or yanked her by the arm. As a reminder, this is a 2-year-old girl. The neighbors in the apartment complex often heard shouts, screams, and thumps coming from Jesse's apartment. They saw Teslin outside. She was covered from head to toe in long pants and long-sleeved shirts. This is the middle of summer. When one neighbor threatened to report the CA to the police, Jesse threatened to kill the man and his girlfriend as well if he did.
After a few months, witnesses no longer saw Teslin during the parties, but they could still hear her. Jesse kept her in the bedroom. Only he was allowed to go in, and when he came out, they would hear her crying for hours. No one was allowed in to comfort her or to see what he had done to her. The most incomprehensible part of the story is the number of people who knew Teslin was in trouble but never got any help for her. Some might have been afraid of Jesse, but they could have made an anonymous call. Many likely were more concerned that their source of crystal would dry up if they reported what they saw. And without a report explaining the severity of the situation, the few people who tried to get her help were unsuccessful. One unnamed member of Stella's family reached out to Teslin's father in California. She said Stella was neglecting her daughter and offered to arrange for the toddler to attend a birthday party. In this plan, Jason would have essentially kidnapped Teslin and taken her back to California. Unaware of Teslin's dangerous living situation, Jason declined and instead hired an attorney to try to get custody legally.
Though no witnesses contacted authorities, someone told Stella's mother and twin brother that Jesse was hurting her and Teslin. The anonymous person said that Billy needed to do something, so Billy went over to the apartment with a few friends to check on his sister and niece. When they got there, Jesse had nailed the front door closed and would not talk to him. Billy contacted the police, and a sergeant and several officers responded to his call. Jesse told the officers that he had nailed the door shut because he was afraid of Billy. The officers asked Billy to leave, saying he was escalating the situation. The officers were there. A neighbor came out of her apartment and told the officers they needed to go in and get that little girl. Somehow, the authorities also missed the severity of the situation. Stella told them she was unhurt and that everything was fine. One officer broke down a couple of boards on the backyard fence and shined his flashlight into a rear window. He saw Teslin on the couch covered with a blanket and waved at her. When she waved back, he decided that she was fine and concluded this odd welfare check. The whole visit was finished in half an hour. Had they entered the apartment, even a cursory examination of the toddler would have shown ligature marks on her wrists and ankles, bruising all over her body, and cigarette burns on her legs. In their final mistake, the cops never filed a report with DHS, even though state law requires them to do so in any case involving reports of CA. Not only that, Jesse was already forbidden from seeing his 2-year-old daughter because of CA. If they had filed a report, the agency would have been able to take Teslin into custody immediately, but instead, they sent her Uncle Billy home and left her with her tormentor.
1 week later, on June 13th, Stella and Jesse left Teslin tied up in the bedroom while they partied. Sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. on the 14th, they came back to find her blue and limp. Jesse cut her bindings. Instead of calling an ambulance or the fire station staffed with paramedics that was located right across the street from the apartment complex, he attempted to revive her on his own. When CPR didn't work, he hit her several times and splashed her with cold water. In some sort of crystal-fueled Frankenstein craziness, he cut the cord off a lamp, plugged it into the wall, and used the frayed end to try to shock her back to life. But Teslin was gone. He and Stella decided to leave her in the bedroom while they tried to figure out what to do. They knew that Teslin had so many severe injuries that they'd go to jail if anyone saw what they did to her. So they decided to bury her. Jesse called his 18-year-old sister Lacey and asked her to come to the apartment. Jesse and Stella put Teslin in a laundry basket, loaded her in a car, and Lacey drove to a wooded area about an hour away near Sweet Home, Oregon. They buried the toddler there in a shallow grave. Now, back at the apartment, the couple put all of Teslin's clothes and any other evidence that they could find into 2 trash bags and threw it all into the apartment building's dumpster.
Witnesses that saw them in the days after, so they acted like they were on their honeymoon. They were not fighting as much as they usually did and seemed happy and affectionate. They talked about wanting to move out of town and about their plans to have a baby boy together. When anyone asked about Teslin, they said she was with a babysitter or visiting Stella's aunt. But their lovey-dovey, child-free vacation was short-lived. 2 days later, Lacey, overcome by guilt and grief, confessed to Springfield police. She told them what she had seen, where she had driven. Following her directions down a remote logging road, cops found and unearthed Teslin's grave on June 17th. Buried with her, they found a blue braided belt, a piece of cloth torn from a curtain, a strip of gray cloth, and a woman's ring. Police searched their apartment and the complex for evidence. They found trash bags and easily linked them to the couple. They had thrown away the cut electrical cord, but left the lamp with the matching end in their apartment. They threw away all the ropes and knotted cloth they used to tie Teslin up, and also tossed in a handmade Mother's Day card that the toddler had made for her. Some of the knotted cloth and rope they threw away matched items recovered from Teslin's grave. Strands of the toddler's blonde hair were found caught in the knots. Inside the apartment, investigators found the propane torch that Jesse was so fond of. They found a pair of pliers covered with burn residue, multiple bottles of rubbing alcohol, and more strips of knotted white cloth. The significance of some of this evidence would not be clear until after Teslin's autopsy was completed. Captain Jerry Smith, the Springfield officer in charge of the investigation, said, "This is the most severe case of CA that we've ever seen. This kid was literally tortured."
In his interview with police, Jesse tried to say that some of Teslin's most serious wounds were accidentally caused. He said he spanked her a little too hard and broke the skin. When the skin got infected, he and Stella poured rubbing alcohol in it, and he blamed the rubbing alcohol for her burns. He admitted he didn't get any medical treatment for the little girl, even though she was only steps away from the fire station staffed with paramedics. He also never asked his mother for advice or help, even though she was a nurse. Stella also admitted that she didn't get any medical help for Teslin. She told police she was aware of what was going on but didn't get help because, according to Stella, I didn't want them to find out what Jesse had done. When police asked if Stella realized Teslin could die from her mistreatment, Stella said, "I feared there was a possibility it could happen if it didn't stop. I would have gotten out of there before then." Though that might have been her intent, Stella didn't get out before the worst had happened. She wasn't even trying to get out. Neighbors reported that in the days before Teslin's death, she was talking about going back to California and bringing her son back to Oregon.
The same day Teslin was found, June 17th, Stella and Jesse were arrested for her murder. He was charged with aggravated murder, 6 counts of murder by abuse, 2 counts of first-degree penetration, and abuse of a corpse. Though prosecutors believe Jesse inflicted most of these injuries, they claim Stella knew about it, and that she sometimes even tied Teslin up herself. She also was charged with aggravated murder. After about a month in prison, Jesse hatched an escape plan. He wrote his idea out on paper, including details about how they should incapacitate the prison guard and use knotted bed sheets to crawl out the window, and then he gave it to another inmate. That inmate handed over the handwritten plan to the guards, and Jesse was given a 60-day stay in solitary confinement. He was charged and found guilty of an escape attempt and sentenced to over 2 years for that, before his murder trial even began.
The murder trial started on October 19, 1998, and was presided over by Lane County Circuit Judge Lyle Vellier. In his opening statement, Assistant DA Robert Gorham apologized to the jury for the testimony and evidence they would have to evaluate. He said, "I'm sorry I have to tell you about these things. You must face the reality of this case." He described Teslin's final months to the jury. Sometime in the month or two before her death, Jesse had broken 4 vertebrae in her back. After that injury, he ramped up his torture. He beat, essayed, and starved her. He repeatedly tied her up. He burned her with cigarettes in his propane torch. He stabbed her with a fork. On multiple occasions, he and Stella poured rubbing alcohol into her open wounds. Assistant DA Gorham said, "There are 64 different talking points I have written down on the autopsy report. There are more injuries than that. She has an injury on every part of her body." He explained that during the first 2 weeks of June 1997, Stella and Jesse tied up Teslin up to 10 to 15 separate occasions, sometimes leaving her that way for 10 hours at a time. They bound her with her hands and feet up above her head and shoulders. They secured her with knotted ropes. Sometimes her hair got caught in the knots and ripped out. That is how she spent her 3rd birthday on June 8th, tied up and tortured. The assistant DA called Jesse's assault of the toddler merciless. While she was tied up, on at least 2 occasions, Jesse penetrated her private parts with an object. He also burned them. While Jesse claimed those burns were caused by the rubbing alcohol, evidence at the trial showed he used his propane torch to inflict those injuries. Sometime on her last day, he hit her on the head so hard it bruised her brain. He punched or stomped on her, causing internal injuries, and he scraped, bruised, and punctured the skin on her belly with a fork. Some reports at the time stated that the medical examiner cried during the testimony. Graphic photos of Teslin's injuries were shown to the courtroom. She was bruised all over her body. She had several hundred electrical burn marks from Jesse's attempt to revive her with a lamp cord. Her wrist and ankles had been rubbed raw from the repeated binding. Her back was broken in 4 places, and her private parts had been violated. She had infected and unhealed blisters all over her body. She had what was described as a gaping wound on her back caused by the propane torch. The toxicology report showed a large amount of isopropyl alcohol in her system, alcohol she had absorbed through her many open wounds. Internally, her brain and other internal organs were bruised, and her liver and one of her kidneys had ruptured. She was bleeding internally. She also suffered from septic shock and fluid loss from her multiple 3rd-degree burns. The medical examiner listed her cause of death as battered child syndrome and said she died of shock caused by her many injuries.
In his closing statements, the defense attorney tried to argue that Jesse hadn't deliberately killed the girl and said her death was the result of inappropriate, misguided medical care. If the burns had not been caused by the rubbing alcohol, the lawyer argued they could have been caused by overly hot bath water accidentally used to clean the toddler. And even if his client had caused Teslin's death, he argued that Jesse would not have had a reasonable expectation that her death would follow.
In response to the defense's closing argument, the prosecutor asked the jury to imagine Teslin's final days in detail. He spoke in plain language about the truly horrific events. It was a compelling and convincing argument, but we will warn you, it is not easy to listen to. It is probably arguably worse than the autopsy testimony. Here's what he said.
Deliberately means a state of mind that examines and considers the contemplated act and whether that act should or shouldn't be done. Deliberation is present if the thinking is done in a cool mental state under such circumstances and for such a period of time as to permit a careful weighing of the proposed decision. I want you to, unfortunately, I am going to draw you back a little bit to what was going on in that home the last few days of Teslin's life. What we know pretty clearly is there was a violent blow, at least to her back, and perhaps a violent blow to her abdomen that caused internal bleeding. We know she was SA'd as she was vaginally penetrated within the last couple days of her life. We know the night she died, she was tied up with her legs up over her head. We know she had vomited. By all accounts, the abdominal bleeding was apparently causing her some distress, and we know, I think logically, that the defendant was well aware that the child was in some severe distress. And that alone might be enough for deliberation, but I want you to think about the condition that this little girl was in when those terrible injuries in and of themselves were inflicted on her. You can look at the pictures and see that the labia is essentially burned off, and whether or not it is burned off by boiling water poured over her area when she was tied up, or whether or not it's burned off by a propane torch doesn't really matter. When Jesse is essaying her, he is looking at the full sight, sound, smell package of that child. She must have begged for mercy. She must have expressed the terrible pain she felt, and he went on anyway. I guess she was probably crying when he stomped on her back. And think about what he was stomping on. A little girl, 31 pounds, damaged almost beyond repair, beaten repeatedly, fed occasionally, tied up, essayed, burned with cigarettes for weeks, even months. Did he deliberately do those acts? What other word would you put with it? He extremely deliberately did those acts. He knew exactly what he was doing. Was it reasonable for him to expect her to die? Could she survive another week in this household? Would she have lived another week? Ask yourself that. Probably not. Would she have lived another month? No. Was he going to kill her one day or another? Think about what she must have felt in the bedroom, internally bleeding, tied up while her mother and Jesse partied in the other room. What a terrible, torturous, brutal way to die. It would be terrible for all of us, for adults. But for a little girl who just turned 3 years old the week before, it must have been much more terrifying, much more hard to understand. Were these acts deliberate? Absolutely.
After hearing this part of the closing statement, one of the jurors began to cry uncontrollably, repeatedly saying, "God, that poor baby."
The defense moved for a mistrial, accusing Assistant DA Gorham of inflaming the jury. Judge Vellier denied the mistrial and replaced the crying juror with one of 4 alternates. Jesse, thankfully, was found guilty on all counts. November 5th, the penalty phase of his trial began. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning with a death sentence. Teslin's grandfather, Ken, thanked the jury, saying they had the hardest job in the world. They just took somebody's life, but he deserved it. This is exactly what we came to Oregon for. Jesse appealed his death sentence multiple times. The last appeal started in 2003 and didn't finish until 2012, when it was denied. Stella's first trial began in January of '99 and was presided over by Judge Pierre Van Rysselberg. She was also charged with aggravated murder for her role in Teslin's death. During the trial, Stella often cried when evidence of her daughter's terrible injuries was shown. Much of her defense centered around her mental stability. The defense's expert witness testified that Stella suffered from PTSD and personality disorders caused by childhood CA and trauma from witnessing her father's death. Psychologists said her mental issues and drug addiction made her an easy mark for a monster like Jesse. At the trial, Stella claimed she hadn't seen her daughter for the last 2 weeks, but videotaped statements she made to police contradicted that claim. Her sister Karen spoke in her defense. She said Stella had always appeared to be a good mother who never even spanked her kids. Her sister, her mother, and another female relative all testified they had given Teslin a bath about 1 month before her death and saw no injuries on the toddler. This was contradicted by medical evidence that claimed some of her burns had occurred as much as 8 weeks prior. In his closing arguments, Assistant DA Gorham told the jury that Stella knew enough about right from wrong to try to save herself from what she did. He pointed out that she made sure to dress Teslin in long sleeves and pants anytime she was outside and lied to police when they could have helped her. He said, "You should look at her ability to make choices. The choices she made to protect her child. The choices she made to protect herself. She aided Jesse Compton in torturing that child to death." The jury deliberated for almost 2 days, but couldn't come to an agreement. One jury member didn't think she was guilty of aggravated murder. In normal circumstances, the jury would have considered lesser charges, but they weren't allowed to because of a law that had been passed by the Oregon legislature the year before. Without the unanimous vote needed to find her guilty, and also without 2 votes needed to find her not guilty, the jury was hung and the judge declared a mistrial. Her second trial started on April 23rd and concluded 6 days later. She was found guilty of all counts, including aggravated murder, murder by abuse by neglect, and abuse of a corpse. On May 7th, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She appealed and her conviction was affirmed in July of 1999. She is currently serving her time at the Coffee Creek Correctional Institute in Wilsonville, Oregon, where she goes by the name Stella Singing Crow.
In December of 2022, Oregon Governor Kate Brown commuted Jesse's death sentence, along with 16 other death row inmates. She said the commutation had nothing to do with the inmates' behavior, their attempts at rehabilitation, or whether they deserved forgiveness. Instead, she said it reflects the recognition that death penalty is immoral. It is an irreversible punishment that does not allow for correction. It is wasteful of taxpayer dollars, does not make communities safer, and cannot and never has been administered fairly and equitably. Instead of facing death, Jesse will now face life in prison. There had already been a long moratorium on the death penalty in Oregon, and even when it was active, only 2 people had been executed since 1984. The governor acknowledged the stress this placed on the victims' families, saying, "I also recognize the pain and uncertainty victims experience as they wait for decades while individuals sit on death row. My hope is that this commutation will bring us a significant step closer to finality in these cases." In other words, the families at least know to stop waiting now. Jesse is currently serving his time at Two Rivers Correctional Institution in Umatilla, Oregon. Let me know what you think about that in the comment section down below. As for me, I really hope his fellow inmates finish the job.
Teslin's family in California buried her in Desert View Memorial Park in Victorville. Pictures from her funeral show her father grieving by her casket. Her gravestone reads, "Walk softly, an angel lies here." Her grandfather Ken passed away in 2007. He was buried at the same cemetery not far from his beloved granddaughter. Her father never spoke publicly about her death. Family members spoke of his great grief. Shortly after her funeral, her grandfather told reporters, "The other day it was 5:30 in the morning, and I had to go out and take care of the horses. Jason was sitting out front on the concrete by the driveway. He was crying his eyes out." Teslin's brother, Jason Jr., stayed in California with his father and grandparents. For some time after her death, he often woke up terrified, screaming about monsters. Jason's cousin, Michelle Smith, told reporters that Jason wanted both his children to stay in California, but Stella had legal custody. If he had taken his daughter, he could have gone to jail for kidnapping. He was trying to do the right thing. She added, "If we had known what was going on, we would have kidnapped her." She doesn't understand how so many people could have seen what was happening to Teslin, and not one of them notified authorities. She said, "I'm really frustrated that not one single person picked up the phone and called. Someone should have called. That's what would have saved her." Members of the Springfield Police Department realized they had the opportunity to save Teslin, but made fatal mistakes that day they visited. After her death, they made a policy change allowing officers to enter a home without a warrant in order to complete a welfare check. They also committed to enforcing state regulations that already required a report to be made anytime CA is reported, even if officers find no evidence. Susie Day, the Lane County branch manager of DHS, said, "If we can take this terrible loss and turn it into a call for action for the community to save others, at least we have honored her and helped other children." And this is what the agency tried to do for Teslin. After her death, the agency created a public service campaign reminding the public that it is everyone's duty to protect children. They featured a picture of Teslin on their poster. Tagline read, "The Invisible Child. It takes all of you to see me, hear me, speak of me, before I'm gone forever." Bright red letters on the bottom of the poster read, "Stop the abuse."
Serenity Jaslyn Sky Blankenship Sutley was born in Ashtabula, Ohio on September 13, 2016 to parents Kelsey Blankenship and Brandon Sutley. Kelsey told Brandon that there was a chance he wasn't the baby's biological father, but Brandon stayed by her side throughout her pregnancy and was there the day Serenity was born. He wanted to be a father and was prepared to take care of the infant, so Kelsey listed his name on her birth certificate. Her godmother called Serenity a wonderful baby. She had blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and at the time of this story was just learning to walk. She was almost always happy and had a bright personality. Her godmother said she was a beautiful, beautiful baby who was always laughing and always making everyone else smile. She loved Scooby-Doo, the monkey Stuffy her grandmother made for her, and playing video games with her mom. Her favorite animal was an owl, and she learned to say, "Hoo, hoo." Her mom loved hearing her make her owl sound and said, "It made my day when she did it." For her first birthday, her family threw her a princess-themed party complete with pink and white cake. She was dressed in pink from her dress and sash that said, "I'm one," to her pink princess tiara and princess wand. She was surrounded by a family that adored her, including her parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, godparents, aunts and uncles, all who came together to celebrate her special day. Her godmother said she was so happy that day.
Serenity's mother, Kelsey, struggled in her late teens and early 20s. She suffered from depression and tried to remove herself from this earth as a result. To try to deal with her mental health issues, she self-medicated with drugs and subsequently ended up with a substance use problem. She moved quickly from one relationship to the next, looking for acceptance and love. But once she had Serenity, Kelsey wanted to turn her life around. She said, "My past was not a good one. When I held my little miss for the first time, I had a spiritual awakening. I knew a reason to stay clean and be the mother I needed to be for my daughter." Brandon's family embraced Kelsey and the new baby girl. His mother, Melissa Sutley, loved Kelsey and treated her like her own daughter. She said, "Kelsey is not my child, but I love her as if she was my child." Having the support of family helped, but taking care of a newborn was difficult. Already prone to depression, Kelsey struggled even more postpartum. She and Brandon broke up, realizing they were better as friends than as romantic partners. Kelsey tried to power through it on her own, but eventually realized that she needed help. Around this time, Kelsey gave Serenity to somebody else to take care of to keep her safe, but she was adamant that she could never give up custody of her child. Kelsey said, "From the beginning, I've had custody of my daughter. I've had my issues, and I've had people there to help me out so I can work on my issues." When she felt stronger, Kelsey started taking care of Serenity again. By February of 2017, Serenity's godparents, Clarissa Murtha and her husband Chico, were watching the baby every Tuesday and Friday, allowing Kelsey time to work her program. Her godparents were as close as family and were a huge part of Kelsey's support system. Clarissa said, "We were like her grandparents. We acted like her grandparents. I was the Mooma and my husband was her papa. We were so close to her all the time." Kelsey appreciated their help, saying, "They have been there for everything, and without them, I would be lost." She and Brandon were co-parenting. He and his family were also part of Kelsey's support system. With their support, she was able to take care of her baby and stay sober. Through it all, she was drug tested once a week and never failed a test. Despite all her success, though, She was still looking for love and acceptance, which made her vulnerable to a certain kind of man, and one of those men eventually found her.
Joshua Gerda was significantly older than Kelsey. He was 37 and Kelsey was only 22. He had children of his own, but they lived across the state line in Pennsylvania, and he didn't see them much. He met Kelsey in July of 2017. She had gone out with friends and, as the sober one, volunteered to be the designated driver and to get everyone home safe. When Kelsey brought her friend back to her place, Joshua tagged along. She said, "He came back to my place with my neighbor. We all sat down playing video games and talking, and it just started from there." Not long after, Joshua moved into her apartment on Clark Street in Conneaut, which meant he had easy access to Kelsey and her baby. She thought she knew him. She said, "I knew some of his background, but there was a lot he never told her. Kelsey was just too trusting, and not just with Joshua. She didn't seem to understand the risk of letting people have access to a baby, especially one too young to talk." An example of her too trusting behavior occurred in August when she went to a local festival in Conneaut and ran into Melinda Sailors. Melinda was the aunt of Andrew Payne, a man Kelsey had dated. Kelsey thought Andrew might be Serenity's father and asked him to take a paternity test, but he hadn't got the test done yet. Kelsey told Melinda she wanted Andrew to meet the baby in case she was his, so when she heard that Andrew might be there later, she handed the baby to Melinda and left to enjoy the festival. Melinda was appalled. She said, "She never met me before in my life, but she left that baby with me for 45 minutes unattended." Everything was fine that day, but Kelsey didn't seem to realize all the things that could have gone wrong.
On October 6, 2017, about a month after the princess party, Kelsey put the baby down for the night, took her evening medicine, and went to bed. When she was asleep, Joshua was alone and unsupervised. Around 5:15 the next morning, Kelsey ran out of her apartment carrying Serenity's limp body, screaming, "Help my baby." She shouted and banged on her neighbors' doors, begging for help. Someone called 911 and paramedics quickly responded. When they arrived, the baby was unconscious and was not breathing. She had obvious blunt force injuries to her head and torso. The report noted that Kelsey told them she found her unresponsive and suffering from cardiac arrest in her bedroom. She was rushed to the University Hospital's Conneaut Medical Center, but there was nothing doctors could do to help her. Serenity was gone and was pronounced dead at the hospital. Detectives questioned both Kelsey and Joshua, and they both said they were home at the apartment that night. Kelsey didn't report witnessing or hearing any violence, and officers didn't have enough evidence to arrest either of them, so they were both released from custody. Conneaut Detective Michael Sullivan said Joshua was very cooperative in the initial interview. We had no charges against him and released him.
Meanwhile, the doctors who saw her injuries in the emergency room were very concerned. They believed they saw evidence that the baby, who was only 13 months old, had been SA'd. Acting on that information and concerned that an offender and a child murderer was on the loose, police obtained a warrant for Joshua's arrest, but he was nowhere to be found. Officers checked with his family in western Pennsylvania and Ohio, but could find no trace of him. His picture was sent out to local media in both states and shared nationwide on television. Local police departments were also sent his picture and told to be on the lookout for Joshua. In the bolo, he was described as having brown hair, a brown goatee covering a misaligned jaw, a deformed right ear, and tattoos on his forearms.
Joshua was sighted with a man driving a dark gray Ford F-150. Surveillance cameras captured an image of the two men and also captured the license plate number of the truck. Using that information, the police tracked down the man, who was from Buffalo, New York. Joshua had been hitchhiking and the driver had picked him up without knowing who he was or that he was wanted by police. The driver was able to tell the police that he dropped Joshua off when the truck broke down about 20 miles north of Sewickley, Pennsylvania, helping to narrow the search down. On October 16th, the Northern Ohio Violent Criminal Task Force offered a $5,000 reward for information about his whereabouts. Tips poured in, but most of them were dead ends. On October 26, he was seen at a Sheetz convenience store on Mount Nebo Road wearing a black ball cap and a camouflage jacket and carrying a large backpack. Locals saw him walking in the area on foot. One woman named Amanda Manco saw him in the woods behind her house in Ohio Township, Pennsylvania, but didn't realize he was wanted by police until her mother sent her a picture of him she had seen in the news. Because her German shepherds had been barking at night, she thought he might have been camping nearby. Police used a drone to search the area from above. They found his campsite in a fire pit, but no sign of Joshua. Neighbors were uneasy, and additional security was arranged for at least one school in the area.
Now, if they catch Joshua Gerto tonight, they'll take him here to the Allegheny County Jail. But right now, he's still on the loose, and police are searching for him in the Ohio Township area. Now, we talked with one man who says he came face to face with the alleged killer, and he says he asked him for directions to the nearest gas station in the interstate. Drones and helicopters in the sky. Law enforcement on the ground, all looking for this man, Joshua Gerto. He's wanted in the sex assault and homicide of 13-month-old Serenity Sutley in Conneaut, Ohio.
All my doors are locked right now, and they're going to stay locked.
All day and into the night, several law enforcement agencies have been trying to track him down. Brian O'Neill says he spotted him.
Yeah, yesterday afternoon, I was down over the hill, down at the end of the driveway, digging a ditch for a new gas line. And I was actually in the hole, and I just kind of turned to my left, and there was a guy only about 5 or 6 feet away from me.
He says that man asked him for directions to the nearest gas station.
He had disheveled clothes on and a big backpack, and he looked like he had been camping or hiking or something like that.
O'Neill says he didn't realize it at the time, but he now believes that was Gerto. He says this happened before the sighting at Sheets. These security cam photos possibly show Gerto inside of the sheets off Mount Nebo Road around 4:30 yesterday in Ohio Township. People also say they spotted a campsite near Ohio Township Community Park and Nature Center, and they alerted police.
And now I see this tent in the woods that's not ours.
Police don't know if this was the place where Gerto may have been camping out, but they looked into it, then moved on to other leads. Police are offering a $5,000 reward for anyone who has information leading to Gerto's arrest.
On October 27th, he was seen at another Sheetz convenience store about 7 miles away, this time on Nicholson Road in Franklin Park, Pennsylvania. Patrolman Kevin Lastician spent a few hours that evening looking for Joshua, but had moved on to do his regular checks of business in that area. At 1:40 in the morning, Patrolman Lastician saw him walk right by his patrol car and recognized him right away from the bolo. He called for backup, but when Joshua looked at him and seemed to realize he had been spotted, the patrolman decided he needed to arrest him right away. He said Joshua gave up easily and that there was no fight in him. After 3 weeks on the run, Joshua was finally taken into custody. He was carrying a tent, and officers found a knife and maps of Pennsylvania and New Jersey in his backpack. He was held in Allegheny County Jail for a few days until he was extradited back to Ohio. Meanwhile, Andrew Payne finally submitted his DNA to be tested and discovered he was Serenity's biological father. He told reporters, "I just found out she was mine 3 days ago, and I'm not going to have a life with her now." When asked how he felt about Joshua, he said, "I hope that he gets what he deserves. There is nothing else in this world that I want but justice for Serenity."
Kelsey and Brandon held a press conference to talk about their grief and address the new information about the baby's paternity. Despite the results of the paternity test, Brandon and his family still considered the baby a treasured member of their family. At the press conference, Kelsey also explained the sense of relief she felt when Joshua was captured. She said she was jumping for joy when she heard the news. She was happy because he wasn't out there. He couldn't harm anyone else. Finally, my daughter would receive her justice, which she needs. She also told reporters that Serenity was now her guardian angel and that she did not want to disgrace her memory by using drugs again.
The Blankenship and Sutley family stand united as we mourn the loss of Serenity, the gorgeous princess that she was. Yes, I am not her biological father, but being blood doesn't make you a father. The definition of a father is being there with unconditional love. I was next to Kelsey throughout every part of Serenity's joyful life. I watched her take her first breath in this frightening world. There were a few of us that knew that Serenity could have been one of ours. Even with that being known, I made it my duty to be there regardless, till she was ripped from us by this cruel world, by this evil monster.
My past was not a very good one, but when I held my little miss in my arms for the first time, I gained a spiritual awakening and knew a reason to stay clean and to be the mother I needed to be for my daughter. I just want to thank the first responders, the officers, the community, and everyone that has helped make Josh's world small. The media was fantastic with helping get his picture out. I'm so heartbroken over the whole situation. I'll never get to see my baby girl again. I'll never get to see her go to school for the first time, or lose her tooth, or even get to run around with her and chase her. I'll never get to do any of those fun activities. This was all taken from me, and I'll never get this back. I'm not perfect by no means. I have made my mistakes and have owned up to them all. As for the biological father, I'm sorry that he'll never get to know her, but he has known from the beginning that she could be his. The Sutley family has been there from the beginning, knowing there was a chance that she wasn't theirs. And thank God for Cerny's godparents. They have been there for everything, and without them, I would be lost.
Are you seeing Facebook comments on posts and stuff like that?
Yes.
And how do they strike you?
There's some that are devastating to me because I've loved my daughter from the beginning. And from the beginning, I've had custody of my daughter. I've had my issues, and I've had people there to help me out so I can work on my issues. And then there's some that are very sweet and caring, and that are sincerely there for me.
Are you still attending drug court?
Yes.
So that means that you are randomly drug tested on a
Yes.
pretty constant basis.
Yes, I have been drug tested pretty much almost every day besides a couple of days.
And so you're still participating in that.
Yes, I'll be graduating in November.
Can you say to people, say you should have heard it, or heard something going on or anything like that? Can you address that at all?
I do not like to talk about that at this moment because of the case. I do not want to ruin our chances at getting as much prosecution that we can get for my daughter to have the justice.
How did you meet Curto?
I was someone's DD, and he came back to my place with my neighbor, and we all sat down, we're playing video games and talking, and just started from there.
So you weren't aware of his background then?
I knew some of his background, but I didn't know that he had this.
Why aren't you two together? I mean, I understand you being together as far as being there for Serenity.
We just found out it's best for us to be friends, be there for her. Being apart is just better for us. It's more of a healthy relationship that way.
So what's next for you? What do you do next to move ahead or move forward?
Well, right now I'm trying to get housing, and I've been going to my grief counseling and to my counselors. I start trauma class in November to finish out. It'll probably be January, I believe.
All right. What was your feelings when he was finally captured?
I was enthusiastic. I was jumping for joy at 2 o'clock in the morning when I received the phone call. I ran upstairs. I woke up my cousin and her best friend, and I almost woke up the kids. I was so excited. because there was a sense of relief that I felt finally, that he wasn't out there, that he couldn't harm anyone else, and that finally my daughter would receive her justice that she needs.
Now, will you be following, once the proceedings start in arraignments, will you be following that or attending that?
Yes, absolutely.
How about you, Brandon?
I will more than likely be there.
What was your reaction when you heard that they finally caught up to him?
I was happy, but there was still a part of me that wasn't still satisfied. Just after that, I just don't want to talk about it.
Even though that I'm in the stage where I am very unbelieving in my higher power right now, he's out there helping me to stay clean, to keep going to meetings, to keep being strong that I need to be to get through all this.
I'm doing it for Serenity too.
Yeah, Serenity's my guardian angel right now.
The extended family was devastated. Her grandmother told reporters, "We can hardly breathe right now, but we will have to go on without her." Her great-aunt Bobby Lee Blankenship said that she'd been looking forward to spending Halloween with Serenity. She said she was going to be a teddy bear for Halloween. Now there will be no trick-or-treating, no celebrating Christmas, or watching Serenity at dance recitals.
On November 7th, a secret grand jury indicted Joshua. At his arraignment on November 17th, Serenity's family attended and wore pink t-shirts in her memory. He was charged with 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of SA, 1 count of DV, and 1 count of felonious assault. The aggravated murder charges came with the possibility of a death sentence. Serenity's great-grandfather, Randy Butts, told reporters, "It's just devastating to me. I want him to go for the death penalty. I want him dead. I'm sorry, but that's just the way I feel about him." Joshua pled not guilty, and his bond was set for $1 million. He remained at the Ashtabula County Jail until his trial. And that trial would be a long, long time coming. The next 5 years would be a nightmare for Serenity's family as the county prosecutor's office changed hands several times. A judge recused herself, and the charges against Joshua were lessened from the death penalty to involuntary manslaughter. And the worldwide events of 2020 slowed the court systems down to a crawl. Though the details of the case have been plastered all over the media when Joshua was on the loose and a possible risk to the public at large, once he was arrested, that all changed. Many of the details became closely guarded secrets, and several of the hearings were sealed from public view. Serenity's grandmother, Melissa, attended all of the hearings, but she was not allowed to speak publicly about many details.
On October 17th, 2018, a secret grand jury indicted Kelsey on 7 charges. 2 counts of murder, 1 count of felonious assault, 3 counts of endangering children, and 1 count of DV. Kelsey's attorney asked the judge to set a bail at $50,000, claiming she wasn't a flight risk. She said Kelsey had maintained her sobriety, even while struggling with her grief and loss, and would have run already if she was a flight risk. The prosecutor argued that she didn't run because she didn't know she was going to be charged, saying, "Now that she's arrested and charged, we do consider her a flight risk." The judge sided with the prosecutor and set her bail at $250,000. When Kelsey was indicted, the prosecutor also dropped the death penalty specification from Joshua's charges, but made no other changes.
While running Joshua's DNA to investigate Serenity's case, investigators got a match to an unsolved 2004 SA and burglary case. In that case, a woman had come home a little bit after midnight after her shift as a bartender. She fell asleep watching TV in her bedroom, woke briefly when she thought she heard a noise, but she fell back asleep. She woke again later, and an intruder was choking her with one hand and holding a hammer to her head with his other. She begged him to stop, but he choked her until she passed out. He also hit her on the head with the hammer, cutting her scalp. When she came to, she was stuffed beneath her bed and her underwear were missing. The intruder was still there when she crawled out from under the bed, and he threatened to kill her. She fought back, pried the hammer out of his hand, and squeezed his private so hard that he ran away. She called 911 and officers responded. They found a pair of men's underwear outside her home. She was taken to the hospital, and during her examination, doctors found evidence that she had been SA'd, including fluids containing DNA. This DNA profile was entered into a database, and 16 years later, it matched the DNA sample investigators had taken from Joshua. In December of 2020, he was indicted on 1 count of SA, 1 count of felonious assault, and 2 counts of aggravated burglary. By this time, the 2 previous prosecutors were no longer in office, and prosecutor Colleen O'Toole had taken over.
In March of 2021, Kelsey pled guilty to 1 count of involuntary manslaughter and 1 count of endangering children. At her plea hearing, evidence was presented that Kelsey had told medical personnel that she wished to cause physical harm to her child about 6 months before she started dating Joshua. The Ohio Child Service Board became involved on January 27, 2017, and arranged for Serenity to live elsewhere for some time before returning her to Kelsey. Though the exact details haven't been released, Prosecutor O'Toole publicly called Kelsey mentally ill and said that Serenity was left in the care of 2 people who were not competent to care for themselves, let alone have a child of this tender age. Her family noted that Kelsey said those things when she was struggling with postpartum depression and was asking for help because she was afraid that she would hurt her baby. They thought asking for help was the right thing to do, which it is, and that the prosecutor unfairly used it against her. Prosecutor O'Toole also decided she wouldn't arrange for Kelsey to testify against Joshua because, in her words, the state doesn't know that they did not act in concert against Serenity, and nobody can say that besides Ms. Blankenship and Mr. Gurdo, and they haven't. Despite her plea, Kelsey didn't say she directly hurt her daughter, but instead claimed that she failed her daughter by allowing a wolf in sheep's clothing into their lives. She said, "I brought someone into my daughter's life, and I didn't know he would ever hurt or harm her, and he hurt my daughter." She admitted she created a substantial risk to the health or safety of her child by violating a duty of care, protection, or support that resulted in serious physical harm to the child. As part of her plea, she was sentenced to 6 years in prison and an additional 6 months on parole.
In October of 2021, the prosecutor presented a global resolution plea agreement to Judge Marianne Cezanne, which covered both Serenity's murder and the 2004 essay and burglary. Under the agreement, which was sealed from the public, Joshua would take an Alford plea, meaning he would plead guilty without admitting he did anything wrong. His charges for Serenity's death were reduced to 1 count of involuntary manslaughter and 1 count of felonious assault. He would be sentenced to 6 years for her death, and an additional 10 years for the essay, for a total of 16 years for both crimes. He got more years for the essay in 2004 than he did for killing a young child. Judge Cezanne asked if the victims were happy with the plea agreement, and Prosecutor O'Toole responded, and I quote, "Although no one is happy, obviously, with this plea agreement, based on the evidence that has come forward, they are all in agreement that this is acceptable." The prosecutor also mentioned that the victim of the 2004 case expressed fear and distress at reliving experiences long ago in this cold case. Judge Cezanne wanted to talk to the other victims, in particular Serenity's family members that attended the hearing. Prosecutor O'Toole didn't want the judge to speak with them and asked her to move on, but the judge insisted on doing so. Though the judge made it clear that the victims didn't get to decide if the plea would be accepted, she thought they should be allowed to voice their concerns. Their exact identities were not revealed in official documents, but one of Serenity's family members told the judge, "We don't know anything as to what happened, and that's what our main concern is trying to figure out who is guilty, who is not, and what happened so we can understand that." Another told her, "We felt that if it went to trial, that there's the possibility that he could end up with more time, or if it's not a good case and not presented well enough, he could walk. Well, that's how we had to decide, and we're willing to go to trial. First of all, we want the truth, and we feel if there is a trial, we are going to get the truth." Prosecutor O'Toole also decided some family members didn't qualify as victims. According to grandmother Melissa, she was told by the prosecutor that she was not part of Serenity's real family.
The prosecution characterized the case as a he said, she said type of situation because, and I'm quoting the chief assistant prosecutor here, nobody else was in the room. It's not video recorded. It was one of these whodunit. Prosecutors also revealed some disturbing information to the court, in particular that the state had no evidence supporting the SA charge. The judge was surprised that, knowing they had no evidence, the state still hadn't dismissed those charges. The judge said that just because it was a difficult case didn't mean the state couldn't prove serious crimes beyond a reasonable doubt, and the difficulty of the case meant it should go before a jury. She said, "Justice rests with the trier of fact. In this case, a jury of 12 citizens," and rejected the plea agreement.
Prosecutor O'Toole filed an affidavit with the state Supreme Court, asking to have Judge Cezanne removed. She called the hearing unhinged and described the judge's conduct as unprecedented. Judge Cezanne recused herself, as did the other Ashtabula County judges. Visiting Judge Patricia Cosgrove replaced her. Serenity's family filed to have the records of the secret hearings unsealed and were ultimately successful. Without their lawsuit, the public still would not know what happened at the first plea hearing. After the hearing, Great Aunt Bobby Lee wrote a letter to the editor that was printed in the Ashtabula Star-Beacon. In it, she condemned the actions of Prosecutor Colleen O'Toole and revealed a few details that hadn't been shared with the public. She wrote, "I am the great aunt of the 1-year-old baby Serenity who was murdered in Conneaut, Ohio on October 7th, 2017. Serenity was found in her home, dead with her skull caved in. Serenity's mother's boyfriend, Joshua Gurto, fled the city, fled the state, and was ultimately taken into custody by authorities in Pennsylvania. Mr. Gurto has been sitting in the Ashtabula County Jail awaiting trial for the past 4 years. Serenity's family is appalled and horrified by the way this case has been handled by our new county prosecutor. Currently, Prosecutor Colleen O'Toole is attempting to force a plea deal down the throats of both Serenity's family and the public, which would result in Mr. Gurto receiving 18 years in prison. This is a travesty if allowed to occur. Serenity's head was crushed, and there is enough direct and circumstantial evidence to convict Mr. Gurto of this cold and calculated act. We were assured by the office of the Ashtabula County Prosecuting Attorney in 2018 that Mr. Gurto would never see the light of day. Nicholas Iarachi, then the prosecutor, assured Serenity's family that there was enough evidence to put this monster behind bars for the rest of his life. Now, our new law and order prosecutor, Colleen O'Toole, has told us that the family should accept a plea deal because she didn't believe that a jury would convict Mr. Gurto. It seems to me that Ms. O'Toole is lacking in the courtroom experience and confidence necessary to effectively perform her job. If the court approves Ms. O'Toole's plea deal with Mr. Gurto, what is life worth? My beautiful niece Serenity only lived 1 year. She never had a chance to start life, go to school, to grow up, or to do any of the normal things children do. Mr. Gurto, on the other hand, if O'Toole gets her way, will have the opportunity to start life over again in 18 years. How can anyone with a conscience or an ounce of humanity allow this to happen?
The grief and pain of the family was evident in her letter. Though she wouldn't know it until some days later, the judge had rejected the plea deal, but was then forced off the case by Prosecutor O'Toole. Instead of working with the victims, the new prosecutor seemed to want to work against them. Note that in her letter, Bobby Lee wrote that the plea deal was for 18 years, while the unsealed document listed it as only 16 years. Those documents would not have been available to her at the time, and she may have been told something different. It wouldn't have been surprising if the prosecutor rounded up when talking to the family. In July of 2022, Prosecutor O'Toole dismissed 6 of Joshua's 8 charges and reduced the remaining murder charges to involuntary manslaughter. She also released a public statement about the case in which she repeatedly called Serenity "this child" instead of using her name. Serenity's family spoke out against the reduction and organized a protest around it in August. They lined the streets outside of the prosecutor's office and chanted, "Step up or step down," and "say her name," as cars drove by and honked in support.
Serenity, life matters.
For Jean Carlo and all of those who loved Serenity Sutley, that's the motive that drove them to the Ashtabula County Courthouse for protests. The family outraged over Ashtabula County District Attorney Colleen O'Toole's decision to amend charges for Joshua Gurto, who's accused of raping and murdering the 13-month-old in 2017. Gurto initially faced over 9 charges related to the crime, including 2 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of rape, and 3 counts of murder. In July, O'Toole's office dismissed the aggravated murder charges, the rape charge, and 2 of the murder charges, among others.
I'm sorry, my family and I want it to be the charges that he started with. And to go to court, to go to trial. We want to see him in trial.
O'Toole responded to the protests in a statement Friday afternoon, saying Gurto's case has been reset 22 times, and that, quote, the charges as amended conform to the evidence and what can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Investigators say Sutley died from blunt force trauma to the head. Her mother, Kelsey Blankenship, was also charged and sentenced to 6 years in prison for her role in Sutley's death. Gurto led federal and local police on a national manhunt after she was killed.
Our problem is we have been doing this for 5 years, and it turned into a mess. And it's just gone on and on and on, and it's just breaking our heart.
Great Aunt Bobby Lee hoped the community's support would help sway the prosecutor. She said, "It's not just our family. The whole community is upset. It gives us hope that the community does stand with us. It gives us hope that maybe she will see the error of her ways, see what she's doing. She's not only upsetting us, she's upsetting the whole community. It could have been anybody's baby."
But Prosecutor O'Toole was unmoved. She said, "Although I have deep respect for their right to protest and what they're saying, it does not change our course." She split the 2 cases and negotiated a new plea deal in the 2004 case. The family's protest against the first plea deal wasn't entirely in vain, however. Joshua didn't get to make an Alford plea this time. On March 16, 2022, he pled guilty to 2 counts of aggravated burglary, 1 count of essay, and 1 count of assault. Judge Cosgrove sentenced him to 28 years, 18 more than the 10 he would have gotten for the 2004 charges in the first plea deal. He filed an appeal in May, but his sentence was upheld. Finally, all that was left was Serenity's case. Though the family still wanted a trial, the prosecutor didn't want to take the risk. She told reporters, "A plea agreement allows the defendant to be held accountable for the crimes and adds certainty to the outcome. There is no certainty in the outcome of a trial and no finality in the appeals process." On October 3, 2022, Joshua pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter. All other charges, including the essay, were dropped. The coroner's official report, completed in June of 2018, concluded that Serenity had not been essayed, but that information was not released to the public until years later. According to Prosecutor O'Toole, what ER doctors thought was evidence of an essay was actually a severe bacterial infection. The baby had been treated for the same condition at least once before. Some sources described the condition as a severe diaper rash. Judge Cosgrove confirmed this information during the sentencing portion of the plea hearing. She said the initial charge was based on the misinformation that the prosecution received that there was an essay involved, which there is absolutely not one shred of evidence that an essay of this child was ever perpetrated by anyone. No semen, no DNA, no penetration, nothing. The judge said that 1 month before her death, she had been treated for another terrible rash, an infection in her pelvic area. Further investigation also revealed additional injuries that were inflicted before the night of her death. The judge said, "It has come to light through medical records that prior to Mr. Gurto coming onto the scene, this child had suffered physical injuries that were detectable on x-rays." She said these injuries occurred before Mr. Gurto got associated with Miss Blankenship. Though no DNA was found in her private areas, male DNA was found elsewhere on Serenity. But according to Prosecutor O'Toole, that DNA belonged to an unidentified male and only weakened her case against Joshua, allegedly.
Several members of Serenity's family read impact statements at the hearing. Brandon called Joshua a coward and a monster. He said,
"To a child, a monster is anything that appears scary. As a parent, your duty is to protect that child. The monster my princess had to face was one a parent could never be prepared to protect her from. A parent should not be burying their child. You taking my daughter from me robbed her of being able to enjoy this scary world. She won't be able to experience learning to ride a bike for the first time. She won't be able to learn how to get back up, dust herself off, and try it again. She won't find out what anxiety of the first day of school feels like, and the happiness of school being done for the summer. You ripped all of the joy out of our lives. You stole all of our firsts from us. Now we won't know what her voice will sound like. Her learning, her full sentences, you took our ability to hear her laugh and cry, to see her smile. You were the monster. You stole all of the man's life when you made your heinous choice to be the executioner. I'll never be able to see the nervousness when she introduced me to her first boyfriend. I'll never be able to put her heart back together after someone stole. She loves it. You took so much from me and our family. You are a monster that should suffer in his own mind, knowing what you did. But you won't suffer as much as my princess has. To be exact, she won't have any of these firsts: talking, running, playing with other children, going to school for the first time, making friends. She won't be able to experience becoming a woman. She won't be able to decide what music she likes or her favorite color. She won't be able to ask me to teach her how to drive, to get her permit, and then her license. She can't run to me to comfort her when she needs it. You took her before she could see any part of the world. You ended her life before it even started. I'll never be able to hear her say the words, "I love you, Daddy." You took things that can never be replaced. You are a coward to hurt a child. You are a killer of my daughter's hopes and dreams, as well as a killer of the love she would have been able to give us. You are keeping any information that happened on the day of October 7th, 2017 to yourself and hiding behind the silence.
Grandmother Melissa asked Joshua to turn around. She said,
and I would like this gentleman to turn around and look and watch. He did this. This is why we're here. He should see the emotions of what he's done to the families, that he destroyed their lives. He should be forced to see us in the emotions instead of standing forward and his back towards us like it meant nothing. Where's that? Where's the justice in you standing there with your back against us? Where's that justice? There's no... It's been 5 years since the...
Hold on.
He should look at us. He should be looking at the victims.
Just hold on. All right, I'd like you to turn around, but I want to keep security here. I don't want to be acting out. Mr. Gertzel, please turn around and face the back.
You did this. You put us all here. Turn around and look at us. Face what you did to our family.
All right. You're not going to turn around, is that what you said?
It's been 5 years since the bone-chilling phone call to hurry to the hospital. The nightmare began.
All right, it doesn't really matter if he turns around or not. He hears you. He hears you. I don't know if he understands what you're saying.
I'm saying, I'm reading my letter.
Go ahead.
The nightmare began and it dragged out for 5 years. For 5 years we've been doing this. I have nieces, nephews, friends, I have children Serenity's age. And each time they share pictures or go on adventures, I think to myself and think Serenity should be and would be doing these things if she was here. She would have started kindergarten this year. So you ask me about justice. How can any human being understand and justify taking the life of a baby? A child that was just learning to walk, let alone how to say full sentences. She was robbed of so much, but most of all, she was robbed of life. And you still get to live. You still get to live. Ooh. I can't for the life of me understand why or what or how any person could just kill a baby. We probably will never know what really happened. The only thing I know is the broken heart that you left behind. I know the actions that was made October 7, 2017, early in the morning in that apartment has mentally, emotionally destroyed my entire being. Our entire family is destroyed. This life's not here. Reliving this nightmare over and over, I can't remember a night I've slept well without waking up and crying because all I want to do is hold that sweet angel. I just want to protect her. You took her from so many that spent their day loving her, teaching her, and bringing her joy. So for the last 5 years, coming to each hearing, hell, reliving the nightmare over and over again, the one thing is for certain, I will never be the same person I was before your actions that early morning. I honestly believe you destroyed and changed the life of so many. You are nothing more than a pure evil monster. I pray with all of my being, your children never endure what our family has had to endure, what that baby endured. I hope your children never have to endure. I hope their children never have to endure what you guys endured in that apartment that morning that took the life of this baby. Do you believe the amount of time you're being given is enough? Do you believe that's enough for that? If it was your child, would that be enough? No, it sure wouldn't be. But I do believe in karma. Karma will find you, and you will pay the higher price. And the beauty of karma is you never know when she will find you, but she will. But that's for certain. Don't deserve to see the day of the light of day. You don't deserve that. You don't. Thank you.
In her impact statement, Great Aunt Bobby Lee said she went to school with Joshua.
Take your time.
So I actually know Mr. Gerlo. I went to school with Mr. Gerlo. And I never in my life could imagine that one day we would be standing in this courtroom talking about what you would take from our family. Not just our family, but from friends and the community and just everybody. That baby had the biggest smile, was always laughing, always happy, and we're not going to see that again. We're not going to see her go to kindergarten. We're not going to see her take her first driver's test. We're not going to get to see her go to prom. We're not going to get to see her do anything, and we have no answers. Every time we have to step in this courtroom, it rips it open again, and all we really know is why. That is our biggest question. Why? How could anybody do this to a child? And again, we'll never know the answers because you don't say anything. You won't even look at the family of the little girl that you took away from us.
After the family spoke, Judge Cosgrove handed down her sentence. Since Kelsey also pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter, the judge started with a matching baseline of 6 years. She said Joshua deserved a higher sentence because he had a criminal record and he fled after the crime. She also acknowledged that no sentence she handed out would truly be fair. She said,
Time, the court realizes this, there is no amount of time that I can give Mr. Gurto that will make up for the loss of his precious child's serenity. Nothing.
Judge Cosgrove sentenced him to an additional 8 years to be served in addition to the 28 years, for a total of 36 years. She said,
30 years, you're going to be in your 70s if you live that long. And all I can say is your parole officer hasn't even been born yet.
Joshua is currently serving his time at the Mansfield Correctional Institution in Mansfield, Ohio. His earliest release date is May 11th, 2052. Kelsey served her time at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. She was released on parole on March 26, 2024, and her parole is scheduled to end on September 15th, 2024.
Serenity's family asked for donations to be made in her name to the Halo Christmas program administered through Catholic Charities because that program provided presents for her first Christmas. A vigil for Serenity was held on October 14th at Conneaut Township Park. Jean Carlo, Serenity's great-grandma, told reporters, "Our hearts are broken. We have gone through every emotion possible. Hundreds attended. They struggled against the wind to light candles in tall glass jars, sang Amazing Grace, and prayed together. They also recited the Serenity Prayer, chanting, 'God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.'" Pastor Jan Walsh ended the prayer service saying, "Serenity is looking down on us right now with a big smile because she is safe in the arms of Jesus. We lift Serenity up to you, knowing that when she left, she took a huge piece of our heart with her, but knowing she also left a piece of her heart with each and every one of us whose lives she touched." Serenity's funeral was held on October 16th at the Thompson Smith Nesbitt Funeral Home. She was buried at Green Lawn Memory Gardens. Though they don't think they will ever know what really happened that day, Serenity's family thought Kelsey's biggest crime was making a mistake that is all too common with young people. She trusted someone she shouldn't have and let him have access to her daughter. In an interview, Great Aunt Bobby Lee said, She believed in somebody she didn't know enough about yet. We look at these young girls, or even young males that have little kids, and they just want someone to love them. They just want someone to be with that's going to love them. They don't take 6 months to get to know that person. They don't take the time to get to know that person before they move them into their home. They could look like a knight in shining armor when you first meet them, but you don't know. She also said too many people think these kinds of things could never happen to them, thinking that it can't happen here or can't happen in my family or neighborhood. She wants people to learn from the pain her family suffered and to be more vigilant because it can happen anywhere. Great-grandmother Jean Carlo felt the same way. She said, "These babies are being hurt, and they're being hurt by people that were trusted and people that told them they loved them." She hoped other families would learn from their tragedy, and that Serenity's memory could live on through her story and the other children she could protect. Grandmother Melissa said that men like Joshua prey on young girls who don't have any stability and no real connections with their family. They prey on females like that. She wanted other young women to be warned against bringing a stranger into their child's life. She said her family wanted to use all of this as awareness and to maybe help protect somebody else's child. Because if it reaches one person in each town, imagine how many babies this story saved.
Jabraylon Quintez Babels was born on July 3, 2009 to parents Byron Babels and Jasmine Thompson of Dallas, Texas. Jasmine was originally from Arkansas and was about 19 when Jabraylon was born, while Byron was about 37. Jabraylon already had an older brother who was about a year and a half older than him, as well as many extended family members. Everyone called Jabraylon Bam Bam or Bamster, and he was known for being bright and talkative. Jabraylon was an adorable little boy with black hair, dark brown eyes, and a big smile. Unfortunately, little Jabraylon was born into a complicated family life. His father, Byron, went to prison for felony forgery shortly after Jabraylon was born. While Byron was in jail, Jabraylon's mother, Jasmine, wasted no time finding a new boyfriend. She started dating a new boyfriend named Carnellis Delaney Simmons, age 37. Carnellis was a man with a violent past, having already been convicted of homicide in 1994. He had killed another man during a fight outside of a South Dallas bar and was sentenced to 15 years in prison for the homicide as well as drug charges. He was released in late 2007, but it didn't take long for him to get into trouble again. 2 years after leaving jail, Carnellis was arrested by the Dallas police on even more drug charges after he told them he was selling vials of PCP for $15 each.
After serving his jail time, Jabraylon's father Byron was released from prison on parole in September of 2010. He spent as much time as he could with his 1-year-old son after his release, but Jabraylon and his older brother lived with Jasmine and her new boyfriend Carnellis. Carnellis' apartment was a known drug house, but that didn't seem to deter Jasmine from bringing her 2 young children into his vicinity. By November of 2010, she was living with Carnellis in a new apartment in the same complex at 8110 Skillman Street in the Lake Highlands neighborhood of Dallas. Jasmine knew that Carnellis was a convicted murderer, but she brushed that off. She never pressed him for details about his homicide conviction and said, "That was way before he knew me." Jasmine definitely knew that Carnellis was a drug dealer, but didn't seem to think that made him a danger to her 2 sons. She frequently left the boys with Carnellis while she went to work. She said he treated the boys like they were his own and that she didn't have money to hire somebody else to babysit them.
On November 4th, 2010, when Jabraylon was 16 months old and his brother was nearly 3 years old, their mother went to the hospital to seek treatment for a UTI. She left Carnellis in charge of babysitting the 2 boys. At 11:49 p.m. that evening, Carnellis called 911 to report that Jabraylon had been burned while he was cooking in the kitchen. In the 911 call, Carnellis says that he was heating up water on the stove and didn't realize that his baby son Jabraylon was behind him. Carnellis said that when he turned around, all the water spilled on him. He said, "The water's so hot it hit him and all his skin is coming off." Sometime during the 911 call, Jasmine returned home. With the help of friends, she tried to administer care for Jabraylon while Carnellis relayed instructions from the 911 operator. Paramedics with Dallas Fire Rescue arrived and rushed Jabraylon to Parkland Memorial Hospital, where it was found that he had third-degree burns on about 30% of his body. There were burns on both of his legs and butt, as well as on his right hand and wrist. He also had bruises on the left side of his face.
Dallas police were called to investigate. Officer Alyssa Wattis, Officer Ronald Carroll, and Officer R. Fink arrived at the hospital at 12:10 a.m. and found Jasmine in the emergency room with Jabrailon. While they were in the hospital, Carnelis told responding officers that he was standing in the kitchen holding a pot of boiling water when Jabrailon came running up to him. He told the officers that he dropped the hot water on the floor and heard the boy begin to scream. He said that he picked up the child and put him on a bed. When he realized that the toddler's skin was falling off, he called 911 for help. Jasmine told the officers that she wasn't home at the time of the injuries, but that Carnelis had called her to say that Jabrailon had been burned. She stated to the officers that when she left home herself that evening, Jabrailon was uninjured. Carnelis confirmed that the only other person in the apartment during the incident was Jabrailon's older brother. Doctors in the burn unit explained the extent of Jabrailon's injuries to the investigating officers, which were at least second-degree partial thickness burns on his legs and second-degree burns on his hand. The police and the doctors agreed that the burn injuries did not seem consistent with Carnelis' story that he had simply splashed Jabrailon with water from a drop pot. Jasmine and Carnelis signed consent forms for the police to search their apartment, and then Carnelis was transported to Dallas Police Headquarters to be interviewed further by detectives.
According to Jasmine, Carnelis often cooked food for the family. When she got the call that Jabrailon had been burned, she arrived home from the hospital to find that everything was laid out in the kitchen as if Carnelis was preparing a meal. Police photographed the scene the next morning, which showed a box of hamburger helpers sitting out, as well as a package of pork chops sitting on the top of the refrigerator. Other photographs of the kitchen showed a towel on the floor near the stove, as well as a large pot on the stove containing a small amount of water. In addition to the hamburger helper, police found a lot of other interesting items of evidence in the apartment. In a cabinet over the stove, officers found 8 plastic baggies of Coke in a clear plastic bowl. In the refrigerator, they also found 95 brown vials containing liquid PCP. In addition to the illegal drugs, officers also seized 27 bottles of assorted flavored vodkas, 16 bottles of other vodka, 17 cigarette lighters, 3 condoms, 4 empty cigar boxes, 43 cigars, a box of cut-up cigarettes, and a small amount of cash that was found in the cabinets. Carnelis also had over $1,000 in his pants pocket, which the police placed in a secure property room along with the other items removed from the apartment.
After speaking to Carnelis, the Dallas Police CA unit arrested him the following morning on November 5th. He was arrested on the charge of injury to a child, a first-degree felony charge. The case was being investigated by Dallas police detectives as well as Child Protective Services. Carnelis was held at the Dallas County Jail with bail pending. Jabrailon's older brother was not injured in the incident and was eventually placed in the care of his grandmother. Meanwhile, little Jabrailon remained in the Parkland Hospital burn unit. His condition was not initially released to the public, but we can assume from the extent of his horrific burn injuries that he was likely in critical condition. Jasmine was not considered a suspect in the case as she was not home at the time of the incident. She said that Carnelis told her that a pot of scalding water had accidentally fallen over onto Jabrailon. When interviewed, she said, "The police told me that it looked like he was dipped in water. The doctors told me the same. I'm still searching for the truth." Why she hesitated to believe the police and expert pediatric doctors who were in agreement about Jabrailon's injuries and instead gave the benefit of the doubt to the boyfriend who was a convicted murderer and a known drug dealer, we will probably never know.
Little Jabrailon spent 5 agonizing weeks in the hospital, hooked up to a battery of tubes and a breathing machine. In pictures, his body looked lost under the wires, monitors, and tubes crisscrossing his body, placed there in an effort to keep the little boy alive. Doctors tried everything they could to keep the toddler from succumbing to his horrific injuries. During one surgery, doctors had to remove about 60% of his intestines because they were so badly damaged. They removed even more during a second surgery. Jabrailon's tiny body was continuously racked with infections during his harrowing hospital stay. He eventually suffered kidney failure, and his body swelled up so much that he was unrecognizable as cute little Bam Bam. Tragically, despite the doctor's best efforts, at 8:53 p.m. on Saturday, December 11th, Jabrailon passed away at the Children's Medical Center, Dallas. The injuries and infections that he endured were simply too much to overcome. He had suffered 36 days in the hospital since the burn incident before his little body finally gave out. Some trauma is just too much for the human body to bear, especially when, like Jabrailon, someone is hardly older than a baby.
A 1-year-old boy died this weekend. Police say he was held in boiling water more than a month ago. The man accused in the baby's death is his mother's boyfriend, a man with a checkered past. Tonight, in an exclusive interview, Jabrailon Babel's mother speaks to News 8 and the Dallas Morning News. Here's Rebecca Lopez.
For more than 5 weeks, 1-year-old Jabrailon Babels battled for his life.
Such a small baby like that, having to go through anything like that.
His legs and hands burned so severely that his little body couldn't fight off the infections. Babels died this weekend. His mother's boyfriend is accused of causing his death.
I wish it was me laying in his spot.
His mother says she's still searching for answers. Her boyfriend, Cornelius Simmons, was babysitting the child when he claims he burned him accidentally.
Cornelius, he called me and he told me that the baby was burned. That he had accidentally burned the baby. A pot of water fell over on him.
But police say it was no accident. They say the 1-year-old was dipped and held in boiling water. Simmons has a violent past. He was convicted of killing a man in a bar fight in 1994. He got a 15-year prison sentence for the crime.
I walked out that day thinking that I was going to come home to him, and I didn't.
Leaving Jabrailon with Simmons is a decision Jasmine Thompson says she'll regret forever.
I came home to a burnt baby.
The baby's father says he's still trying to understand how someone could hurt his son.
I see a beautiful angel. I see a baby that could never be hurt by anybody. It's hard for me to believe in my heart that anybody would hurt my child. Beautiful and nice and just happy.
Police have arrested Simmons and plan to charge him with the murder of this innocent child.
Unsurprisingly, the Dallas County Medical Examiner ruled Jabrailon's death a homicide. According to the police, the burns on Jabrailon's feet, legs, butt, and hands were not consistent with the story that Cornelis had told them. It looked as if the little boy had been dipped into the pot of boiling water and held there, rather than the accidental spill that Cornelis claimed had happened. Dallas Police Sergeant Brendan Nichols, supervisor of the CA unit, said, "It's a horrible case. It's heartbreaking for everybody involved." Cornelis, meanwhile, was still in jail for the pending injury to a child charge and was also being held on 2 felony drug delivery charges. His bail totaled $80,000.
Jabrailon's mother gave a phone interview the following Monday from the funeral home where she was making arrangements to bury her son. During the interview, Jasmine still sounded supportive of Cornelis, calling him a good person. She said, "It would hurt me so much if it was intentional because I gave my trust to this man. Like I said, God hasn't put anything in my heart to say, Jazz, he did it on purpose." However, other family members were less naive. Jabrailon's aunt Veronica said in an interview, "From the injuries on the baby, I think he did it intentionally. I feel like he tortured him." Jabrailon's father Byron said, "It hurts for me to believe in my heart that anybody would hurt my child. Right now, I just want to bury my son and find out what happened."
At his trial, Cornelis pled guilty to his drug charges, but not guilty to the charge of injury to a child. However, on May 4, 2012, a jury found Cornelis guilty for the first-degree felony charge of injury to a child with significant bodily injury. He was given the maximum sentence of 99 years in prison, plus 5 years for each of his 2 pending drug charges. It's unclear why his charges weren't upgraded to homicide, which is what the medical examiner had determined to be the manner of death for Jabrailon. The prosecution may have simply decided it would be too difficult to prove that Cornelis intentionally killed Jabrailon, while getting a conviction for injury to a child would be a more definite outcome that still carried a heavy sentence.
The following year, in June of 2013, Cornelis filed an appeal contesting his sentence. From the Court of Appeals opinion documents, we finally get a full picture of Jabrailon's injuries. When he was admitted to the hospital, Jabrailon had burns on his legs all the way up to his waist, with more serious burns below the knee. He had burns on the back of both thighs, around his groin, on his right butt, the bottom of both his feet, and on his right hand. He also had a small burn around part of his waist. He had no burns on his head, face, or shoulders, but there were bruises on his left cheek and around his left ear. Disturbingly, it appeared as if the burns were already hours old by the time Jabraylon arrived at the hospital. This last detail suddenly puts into perspective the fact that Cornelis had called 911 at 11:49 p.m., nearly midnight. It's not exactly a time when you would expect someone to be making hamburger helper and pork chops to feed a couple of toddlers. 3 doctors who treated Jabraylon in the hospital testified for the state. 2 of these doctors were board certified in CA pediatric medicine. All 3 doctors testified that the nature of the burns indicated that Jabraylon had been immersed in a hot liquid, and that the burns were not accidental. In the doctor's opinion, it looked as if Jabraylon had been immersed in the hot liquid while wearing a diaper, which leaked a little, causing the burns on his right butt. In a heartbreaking detail, the doctors also agreed that from the burn patterns, it appeared as if the little boy had folded himself into a fetal position to try to protect himself from the scalding liquid. The medical examiner who ultimately performed the autopsy on Jabraylon agreed with the 3 doctors' assessment of the toddler's injuries. However, a pediatrician who testified for the defense after reviewing case documents said that the burns appeared to be accidental and were caused by splattering water. In the appeal, Cornelis' defense argued that since there was evidence that he was making a meal in his attempts to help the child after the boiling water incident, no rational jury could have found that he intentionally hurt Jabraylon. They also argued that Cornelis simply acted on an involuntary physical reflex when he was startled by the little boy coming up behind him in the kitchen. The appeal decision pointed out that at no time during Cornelis' 911 call did he explain how the boiling water ended up in contact with Jabraylon. Rather, in the call he simply said that he was boiling water, he did not see the child behind him, and somehow the child was burned so badly that his skin started peeling off. The appeals court obviously didn't find Cornelis' story any more credible than the original jury did, because they affirmed the trial court decision and denied the appeal. Cornelis is currently in prison with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice in the Jim Ferguson unit in Midway, Texas. Cornelis will be eligible for parole in 2040.
A wake for Jabraylon Babels was scheduled at 6 p.m. on Thursday, December 16th at Golden Gate Funeral Home, with his funeral the next day. We were unable to find any other information on any other memorials or vigils held to remember the little boy. Jabraylon was buried with a simple granite headstone which reads, Jabraylon Quintez Babels, July 3, 2009 to December 11, 2010. There are no tears in heaven. Running along the bottom is an etching of a train with a teddy bear. Earlier this year, Jabraylon's family visited his grave to celebrate what would have been his 15th birthday. They cleaned his gravestone and decorated it with flowers and balloons to remember their Bam Bam. Little Jabraylon was callously killed by being immersed in boiling water before he was even a year and a half old. Because he was so little when he died, we don't know much about what his personality was going to be like if he'd been allowed to grow out of his toddler years. He hadn't even reached his terrible 2s before his life was cut short in such an agonizing way. He never had a first day of kindergarten, never lost his first tooth, never got to ride the school bus. So many milestones and experiences were denied to this little boy for no reason. Let us hope that by telling his story, Jabraylon's memory can live on for many, many more years to come. Logan Nicholas Klein was born on July 14, 2008 in Midland, Texas. At the time of our story, he was a sweet, energetic 11-year-old boy with big brown eyes and dark blonde hair. He loved playing baseball, solving his Rubik's Cube, building things, and playing Legos with his friends. Logan's parents were Stormy Lorraine Johnson and Nicholas Klein. The couple had another child, Lexi Klein, who was born on February 18, 2006. Logan's maternal grandmother was Dorothy Holland, and his paternal grandparents were Christine Barrow and John Klein. Stormy and Nicholas had first met while serving in the U.S. Army together in New York. Stormy later left the Army due to a disability and became a disabled veteran. Nicholas and Stormy divorced right after Logan was born, and Nicholas remarried Christy Klein on May 12, 2012. Logan's younger half-brother Jackson was born in June of 2014. Stormy also remarried after the divorce and had 2 more children. Her marriage ended in divorce again, and she lost custody of the 2 youngest. After their parents broke up, Logan and Lexi lived with their mom in Mullen, Texas, since their father was stationed overseas quite a bit. Now, according to his teachers, Logan was a quiet boy who desperately wanted to make friends. In fact, Logan was so shy that the school thought he might have been getting mistreated at home. The school contacted CPS 4 different times, but they did not investigate anything. At the beginning of September 2019, Logan and Lexi moved back to Midland, Texas to live with their grandmother, Dorothy. Stormy had been using drugs and was no longer capable of looking after her kids properly. 2 months prior, Stormy had gotten into a relationship with 32-year-old Corey Trumbull. Corey Allen Trumbull was born in 1988 in Springfield, Massachusetts, which at one point was the murder capital of the nation. Corey had a very dark and explosive personality. He was a crystal addict and had been from a very young age. He was also cruel to animals and liked to try to kill deer with his bare hands. I have no idea how he would do that, but anyway. His body art also showed that he had a strange obsession with death. In March of 2012, he got a tattoo of a tree on his back, which he called a family tree on Facebook. 1 month later, he added 6 gravestones to the tattoo. He also had a tattoo of a gravestone with the Latin words veritas and equitas, which translates to truth and justice, which will become really ironic later.
Around the same time, he was making Facebook posts about how much he hated his life and venting about his mood switching between happy and depressed so easily. Corey attended Chicopee Comprehensive High School and graduated in 2006 with no career plans and little future to look forward to. When he wasn't working at McDonald's, he was using crystal or hanging out with his baby cousins and nephew. Corey decided to date his cousin named Ashley Gebo from 2010 to 2016. After their breakup, Corey moved to San Angelo, where he became homeless and had to live at the Salvation Army homeless shelter. In 2019, he relocated to Midland, Texas. Corey met Stormy in July of 2019, and 1 month later, they moved into a Midland motel with Logan, Lexi, and Corey's 3 pet dogs named Chaos, Mayhem, and Aphrodite. After meeting Logan and Lexi, Corey instructed them to call him Daddy and referred to them as his kids. He was the leader of the household from that moment onward, even referring to himself as the Alpha. The family lived together in one hotel room, which was filthy and had holes in the ceiling. Corey and Stormy became more open with their crystal addiction and convinced both kids to try the drug out for themselves. That summer, CPS began to investigate the couple, as they should have. They visited them at the motel but failed to take any further action despite the obvious living conditions being so poor and the signs of drug use in the home. After Corey came into their lives, it did not take long before verbal and physical violence started to unfold in the house. Corey was violent towards everyone in the home, but it was Logan in particular who received the brunt of Corey's temper. Corey could not stand Logan. Corey, who was a 5'10", 220-pound man, once stomped on the boy's head, leaving Logan with a permanent brain injury. Because of this, it caused him to have frequent seizures. He was never taken to a doctor for these seizures, and Corey and Stormy would even slap Logan while he was having seizures. On another occasion, Corey kicked Logan into a wall. Stormy never intervened or appeared distressed that her boyfriend was beating her own son. In fact, she would actually encourage Corey to do so, and she would even laugh at him while watching. Logan was treated like a subhuman by his own mother and her boyfriend Corey. He was only allowed to eat dog food and could only drink water from a dog bowl. He was not permitted to use the bathroom and was forced to urinate on himself. Beatings were a daily occurrence for Logan. Corey would hit and kick him in the chest, stomach, back, and legs. He also smoothed down branches and put epoxy and electrical tape on them to make them less likely to break. Corey would hit Logan with the sticks while he begged for him to stop. Stormy would always watch her son being treated horrifically, would just laugh or join in if she felt so inclined.
In late September of 2019, Corey got Stormy to pull Logan and Lexi out of school. He then told their grandmother, Dorothy, that she would never see her grandchildren again, as they were moving to Chillicothe, Texas. Dorothy was understandably devastated and refused to let Corey and Stormy collect their belongings if they weren't going to let her visit her grandchildren. The couple ended up calling the sheriff's department on her, and Dorothy said one last goodbye to her grandchildren, who were not allowed out of the back seat of the car. After her grandchildren moved, Dorothy began calling CPS, and at that point in time, CPS requested a hair follicle test after Stormy said that Logan was on medication for his mental health. The family lived in a rented rundown trailer. Now, all of the rooms were in poor condition, but Logan's was made the worst on purpose. His bedroom was bare with just a bed frame with no mattress. It was also full of dirty clothes covered with dog feces. The conditions were so uncomfortable that Logan tried to make a bed out of the dirty clothes, which Corey and Stormy found hilarious. Logan was not allowed to leave his bedroom without Corey's permission. If he dared, he was beaten mercilessly. Around this time, Lexi began using crystal regularly. Neither Corey nor Stormy worked, and the family was living in poverty, using child support and disability payments to buy drugs instead of necessities. The family started to become very concerned for Stormy and the kids, as she had blocked them on social media and would only call to beg for money. Corey had also taken away all of Logan and Lexi's electronic devices, so they had no way to contact family or anyone in the outside world for that matter. Dorothy requested a wellness check on the family and continued making reports to CPS, but no real action was ever taken.
On October 2nd, 2019, Corey, Stormy, Logan, and Lexi all moved to Wichita Falls. They checked in at the Red Roof Inn and lived in one hotel room with 2 queen beds. The hotel was completely run down with holes in the ceiling, no hot water, and bed bugs. Guests who had the misfortune of staying at this hotel described it as traumatizing and the most disgusting, horrific place. A lot of crime occurred at the hotel as well, and it was well known to the local police. Each morning, Stormy would bring breakfast to the room, and Corey would decide if Logan would eat something or not. If the starving boy was caught trying to sneak food and Corey didn't allow it, Corey would threaten to cut off Logan's fingers. The bedbug-infested beds were also considered too much of a luxury for Logan, so they forced him to sleep on the floor in a corner underneath the sink while Corey's dog slept on the bed instead. As Logan and Lexi weren't enrolled in school and Corey and Stormy didn't work, they spent each day all huddled in the hotel room watching TV and doing drugs. The whole family used crystal, and Logan probably consumed more of it than he did food. Lexi's crystal usage increased dramatically after moving into the Red Roof Inn. Watching her little brother being tortured daily and not being able to help him was likely emotionally scarring, and crystal helped numb the pain that she felt. As December was approaching, the long-term effects of the torture and mistreatment Logan had been subjected to for months were finally starting to show on him. His body could no longer withstand the almost daily beatings. His health began to decline rapidly. First, his feet started to hurt. Lexi would try to rub Logan's feet to ease the pain, but Corey ordered her to stop doing that. Next, Logan became too weak and frail to eat. Stormy responded by attempting to feed him chicken noodle soup, but Logan kept vomiting up black blood. Logan relied on his mother to feed him, but she never did it regularly. He then lost his ability to walk and could only communicate with grunts or hums. Despite being well aware of Logan's deteriorating medical condition, nobody ever sought any sort of medical attention for him. Corey and Stormy still continued to slap and hit Logan, just like they had been doing for months, even in his current condition. On one occasion, Logan fell off the bed and could not get back up. Lexi asked Corey if she could help her brother, but he said that she could not. Lexi then hugged Logan and said that she loved him. Not long after that, Logan appeared to be unconscious. Corey tried CPR, but was unsuccessful. He checked Logan for a pulse, but never found one. Stormy then began to scream and cry, knowing that her son was dead. Corey covered Logan's body in a bedsheet and discussed with Stormy ways to dispose of his body. For the next 3 days, Logan's naked, lifeless body lay in the hotel bathtub, which Corey had filled with ice water to prevent him from decomposing. Corey allowed Lexi to see her brother's body and say goodbye to him. Lexi said she apologized to Logan for letting him down and hoped that he was in a better place. Corey and Stormy then took Logan out of the tub, dressed him in his clothes, and put him in a wheelchair that he had found in the hotel dumpster. Logan's body was finally wheeled out of the hotel and dumped in a nearby abandoned car on Kenzie Avenue off Old Iowa Park Road. Lexi testified that when Corey and Stormy returned from discarding Logan's body, they were acting as if they had just had a fun night out. The couple kept laughing with each other, believing they had gotten away with killing Logan. They then had a casual night in front of the TV, watching Futurama and using crystal. There's a trend you may have noticed in some of the previous cases we've covered, and especially Logan's case. And that is a parent, or the boyfriend, girlfriend of a parent, harming or torturing a child, realizing they need medical attention. Not only not getting the medical attention, but once they realize that that child is dead, trying to resuscitate them. Makes you wonder what the purpose is. Is it just to keep this child in this near-death state so they can forever torture them? I don't understand it. I want to know just exactly what goes through these people's minds when they look at a defenseless child and think he doesn't need medical attention. But, oh, he's dead. I have nothing to torture anymore. I have nothing to harm anymore. The first time I heard something like this, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was an anomaly. But now we're seeing this case after case after case. It's just disgusting.
In December of 2019, Stormy and Corey were evicted from the Red Roof Inn for not paying rent. Other guests had also been complaining about Corey walking around the parking lot with knives. When the general manager, Nitin Patel, confronted Corey about the rent, he slammed the door in his face. The couple didn't bother paying their own rent, and Stormy's mom, Dorothy, had been paying the previous months but refused to keep doing it, understandably so. Like, I wouldn't either if she can't see the grandkids. After having a door slammed in his face, Nitin called the police to forcibly evict the couple. The family left the hotel at the end of December, but would drive back to pick up mail in the days following. Despite the hotel offering weekly housekeeping, Corey and Stormy left the room in a filthy state, and it took 1 month of cleaning before the room could be rented again. That's saying a lot for a bedbug-infested room. After leaving the Red Roof Inn, the family lived in another Wichita Falls hotel before leaving the state. Corey had started to become very paranoid about the police finding Logan's body and tracing him back to it. His original plan was to run away to California, but the three of them settled in Las Vegas instead. They lived in Corey's new white pickup truck, which he had parked at 3375 Glen Avenue. The place they were renting was a large self-storage container rather than a house.
With Logan now dead, Corey needed someone new to bear the brunt of his temper. It was not long before he started slapping and hitting Stormy the same way they had done to Logan. Corey was becoming more violent each and every day. And now all of a sudden, Stormy wanted out of their relationship since she was the victim. On February 24th of 2020, at approximately 4:30 a.m., Corey fell asleep and Stormy ran away to a 7-Eleven across the street. She was visibly upset and crying and asked the employee to call the police for her. Officer T. Hogger, who responded to the call, did not observe any injuries on Stormy at that time and didn't notice any red flags when he spoke to Corey. After leaving the 7-Eleven with Corey, Stormy reported that he began to physically batter her once again. Once they returned to the truck, Corey wrapped a metal dog leash chain around Stormy's neck, securing it to the headrest to prevent her from escaping. He forced her to drive while at the same time strangling her by pulling on the leash. This violent behavior continued as they drove to the Walgreens pharmacy located at Las Vegas Boulevard in Charleston, where they stayed parked. Corey repeatedly strangled Stormy until she was on the verge of losing consciousness before releasing the leash. As a result, Stormy developed a sore throat, difficulty swallowing, a raspy voice, and nausea. After removing the leash, Corey savagely beat Stormy with his fists and a red and black stick or pipe, focusing on her right leg to prevent her from running away ever again. Stormy sustained numerous injuries, including pain in her left elbow, right elbow, fingers, her right ankle, lower lip, and her head. On February 26 of 2020, at roughly 9:20 a.m., Corey fell asleep in the truck parked at the Walgreens across the street. Stormy ran away from Corey again, went into the Walgreens, and begged the staff to call the police and an ambulance for her. Sergeant Donaldson responded to the call. When he and 2 additional officers arrived, they found Stormy, who was visibly battered. Stormy told them that Corey had caused all of her injuries. After she was taken inside the ambulance, Officer Palmyra and Sergeant Donaldson spoke with Corey in his truck. Corey explained that all 3 of them had been in the Walgreens. When they returned to the car, Corey said he had fallen asleep, and when he woke up, Stormy was gone, and he assumed she had gone back into the store to buy a drink. He also said he knew she was at Walgreens as he had tracked her phone. Inside Corey's truck, police found a dog leash and the black and red sticker pipe that Stormy said she had been beaten with. Officer Jay Guerra spoke with Lexi, who refused to say whether or not there had been any physical altercations between Stormy and Corey. Stormy was taken to Sunrise Hospital for her injuries, which included a broken right shoulder, left elbow, nose, right middle finger, left pinky, right ankle, as well as severe head pain, swollen and bruised eyes, swollen and bleeding lips, and multiple bruises. Medical staff confirmed several fractures and noted that some had previously healed, indicating ongoing DV. Given the evidence and the nature of these injuries, it was clear to officers that a battery with a deadly weapon had occurred. At 10:45 that same night, Corey was arrested and charged with DV, kidnapping, coercion, and domestic battery by strangulation. When he was interviewed by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, he said that Stormy used drugs and had made the whole thing up. Lexi was interviewed as a witness, and Corey coached her on what to say. Back at the hospital, Stormy was questioned 3 times by Detective Metzger about her missing son. The pair spoke at the trauma bay at Las Vegas Hospital. During the interview, Stormy spoke on the phone with her mother and passed the phone to Detective Metzger at one point. Dorothy asked the detective about the children, which made Stormy appear visibly uncomfortable. After hours of questioning, Stormy finally admitted that Logan was dead in Texas.
On February 27th, the Wichita Falls Police Department was called to the Red Roof Inn to search for Logan's body. Detective Bailey was scouring the nearby areas of the hotel and came across an abandoned house with an abandoned Ford in the driveway, just half a block away from the Red Roof Inn. As the detective approached the vehicle, he was hit by a faint smell of decomposition. When he looked in the rearview window of the vehicle, he saw 2 white tennis shoes with what appeared to have ankles in them, as well as the cuff of a pair of blue jeans. Detective Bailey then looked in the driver's side window and found piles of clothing. As he moved to the passenger's window, the smell of decomposition became even more intense. Logan's body was badly decomposed, and he was lying in a fetal position with bugs eating away at his flesh. It was clear to the detective that Logan's body had been there a long time, and he had been dumped in the car purely out of convenience. He also noted that there were no bloodstains on Logan's clothing, suggesting that he had been dressed after death. Detective Bailey sealed off the crime scene, and the Criminal Investigation Division and the Wichita Falls Police Department impound facility were both alerted. For Logan to be removed from the car without any of his decomposed limbs breaking apart, he had to be carefully rewrapped in the tarp he had been lying on. The car he was found in was then towed in a rolled back wrecker and transported to the evidence bay of the Wichita Falls Police Department impound facility. After being identified with a hair sample, Logan was taken for an autopsy by the Dallas County Medical Examiner, Dr. Stephen Hastings. Dr. Hastings noted that the level of decomposition made it hard to determine the cause of death or assess the extent of Logan's injuries. However, he did find hemorrhaging in Logan's deep tissues and bleeding in his soft tissues. Logan's bones also showed signs of obvious trauma. There were multiple fractures to the left and right nasal bone and the left and right upper jaw. Additionally, there was a lot of discoloration, bruises, and contusions, which could only have been caused by extensive blunt force trauma. Logan's skin also had numerous lacerations and tears, suggesting that he had been punched or kicked. One of the tears was actually so deep that it reached the bone. While the autopsy was happening, the Criminal Investigation Division of the Wichita Falls Police Department searched one of the vacant rooms at the Red Roof Inn and found a blood stain about a half-inch width near the shower on the inside of the bathroom. A swab was taken of the blood stain and the results matched Logan's DNA. They also spoke with Natan Patel, who said he thought his tenant Corey acted crazy and weird, and that Logan and Lexi were quiet, wore the exact same clothes every day, and showed no happiness and no smiling whatsoever. Natan also said he only saw the kids at breakfast for a week or two after the family had checked in. After that, Stormy would always bring breakfast back to the room.
At this point, Wichita County already had put out a fugitive warrant for both Corey and Stormy. On March 2nd, he was booked on a $3 million bond and extradited from the Clark County Detention Center in Las Vegas to Wichita County Jail. Wichita County Sheriff's Office had also contacted a member of Las Vegas Police Criminal Apprehension Team Fugitive Task Force about Stormy. She had a full extradition warrant out of Wichita Falls. She was taken to the Clark County Detention Center and booked on February 29th on a $1.25 million bond and later extradited to Wichita County Jail. Corey Trumbull was charged with capital murder and tampering with a corpse. His trial began at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, August 22, 2023, in the 78th District Court, with Judge Jeff McKnight presiding, with a jury of 6 men and 6 women in attendance. The lead prosecutors in this case were Wichita County District Attorney John Gillespie and Assistant District Attorney Kyle Lesser. Corey's defense team was led by William Hull and Gant Grimes, both of the Wichita County Public Defender's Office. Corey pled not guilty to all charges, claiming Logan, a young child, was into BDSM and asking Corey to hit him. Lexi testified that prior to Corey entering her family's life, her brother was a happy and healthy boy. The prosecution noted that after Corey entered Logan's life, he didn't even make it to the end of the year. Through tears, Lexi admitted that once she was able to move beyond the drug-induced fog that she had been living in, she realized she had been manipulated by Corey. That is the reason why she didn't try to get help. Lexi also claimed that Corey and her mother both mutilated her brother's corpse. Corey's sentencing hearing took place on August 29, 2023. The jury only needed, this is probably the quickest I've ever heard, jury only needed 16 minutes to find him guilty of all charges, and the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In March of 2024, Corey appealed his conviction of capital murder, claiming that the prosecution didn't prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and that his capital murder conviction should be reversed altogether. The appeal also stated that the prosecution failed to present evidence showing Corey knowingly and intentionally caused Logan's death, and that he was charged on mere speculation rather than actual evidence. Stormy Johnson pled guilty to felony murder and tampering with evidence. She was sentenced in early September 2023 to life in prison with a minimum of 20 years. Corey's appeal is still in the works.
After Logan's death, Lexi went to live with her maternal grandmother. In September of 2021, she moved to Germany with her father, who was stationed there for 3 years. She made a Facebook post saying she had met so many people and was happier than ever. When she was 18, she moved back to Wichita Falls to testify at Corey and Stormy's trials. Lexi then moved back to Mullen, Texas to live with her grandmother and recently graduated from Mullen High School. The same night police discovered Logan's body, the community of Wichita Falls came together to honor the life of Logan Klein. A candlelight vigil was held at the Angel of Hope Memorial Garden. Dozens of strangers were in attendance alongside some of Logan's neighbors and his 5th grade school teacher, Carrie Pawlowski.
An emotional gathering tonight. People in Wichita Falls paid their respects for an 11-year-old gone too soon.
On February 27th, police found Logan Klein's body in a car on Kinsey Avenue near the Red Roof Inn off Old Iowa Park Road after investigating an unrelated case.
Zach Verdia attended the candlelight vigil tonight at the Angel of Hope Memorial. Now, Zach, how did the community honor Klein?
Well, Lauren and Jaron, the story hits close to home for many who have children or a young sibling. And most folks in attendance tonight had never met Klein, but want to make sure to keep his name alive.
It just hurts me so much because I have my children, my grandchildren and everything, and something like this happening here in Wichita Falls, close to my house. And I'm thinking somebody needs to do something.
The body of 11-year-old Logan Klein, found in late February, leaves many unanswered questions. Carrie Pawlowski teaches in Chillicothe and says Logan was only in her class for 30 days before suddenly leaving. And although it wasn't long, something seemed off.
He wasn't there for long, but he was very quiet. He was a sweet kid. You could tell he wanted to try to make friends, but we knew something was wrong, that things weren't necessarily right for him.
Pulowski says the school did what it could, trying multiple times to get help for Klein, but unfortunately, it was too late.
We contacted CPS 4 different times, our school did, but by the time they could get anything done, they had already moved on. You could tell they knew what they were doing by moving.
The candlelight vigil was a chance for the community to pay their respects, even for those who never got to meet Logan.
When people pass away, they're easily forgotten within 2 weeks or a month. You know, the time just passes by. So it's a great reflection to see individuals come together just to support even people that they don't know.
Gathering to support and remember Logan Klein as the quiet, sweet kid that Pulowski knew.
We're just doing our best to just remember Logan, and of course his age is kind of difficult in the circumstances that we heard on the news and things like that. So just basically doing whatever we can to say a prayer.
A prayer to remember a life cut way too short.
A plate with Logan's name was added to the memorial wall. After his death, Logan's grandmother, Christine Barrow, started a GoFundMe page to cover the travel costs of his funeral, as his father was stationed in Afghanistan. The fundraiser received $2,279 in donations. Logan's funeral was held on Saturday, March 21st, 2020, at Winters Funeral Home in Winters, Texas. It was a private ceremony, and he was buried in nearby Lakeview Cemetery. The exact date of Logan's death is unknown, but February 26, 2020 was written on his grave. The headstone reads, "Our beloved grandson, son, brother, Logan Nicholas Klein, July 14, 2008 to February 26, 2020. Logan's favorite toy, his Rubik's Cube, was placed near the headstone, alongside a wire sculpture of a baseball mitt and a baseball. He will be forever missed by everyone who loved him."